The dinner rush at Bellagio's was finally winding down. Lily Chen sighed with relief as she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and gathered empty plates from table 12. Her feet ached from the 9-hour shift, but she kept a genuine smile on her face. 6 more tables and she could finally head home. "Excuse me," called a deep voice from table 7. "Could I get some more water, please?" Lily nodded toward the well-dressed man sitting alone in the corner. "Right away, sir." She'd noticed him earlier, impossible not to. He carried himself with the confident air of someone used to getting what he wanted. His tailored suit probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. He'd ordered the most expensive wine on the menu without glancing at the price, and he'd been typing away on his laptop between courses. The restaurant had a certain reputation in the financial district. Wealthy executives, investment bankers, and real estate moguls frequently dined here to impress clients or celebrate deals. Lily had learned to be invisible yet attentive, anticipating needs without intruding on conversations about millions of dollars exchanging hands. She refilled the man's water glass and was about to slip away when he closed his laptop. "Thank you," he said, actually looking up at her. Most customers barely acknowledged her existence. "I've been watching you tonight." Lily tensed slightly, her customer service smile not wavering. She'd dealt with her share of inappropriate comments from wealthy men who thought their money entitled them to more than just good service. But the man continued, "You're incredibly efficient. 4 large parties in your section and everyone seems happy. That's rare." "Just doing my job, sir," Lily replied, relaxing a little. "Can I get you anything else? Perhaps dessert?" "Just the check, please." He closed his menu and handed it to her. As she reached for it, the small pendant she wore around her neck slipped out from beneath her uniform. The man's eyes caught the glint of the tiny gold charm shaped like a piano key. "You play?" he asked, gesturing toward it. Lily's hand instinctively went to the pendant. It was her one small indulgence, a reminder of a different life, a different path she once thought she'd travel. "I used to," she admitted. She normally kept conversations with customers brief and professional, but something about his genuine interest made her continue. "A long time ago. Classical?" He guessed. She nodded. "I studied at Juilliard for 2 years. The man's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "Juilliard? That's impressive. What happened?" Lily rarely shared her story with strangers, but the quiet lull between dinner and late-night service had created an unusual moment of calm in the restaurant. For once, she wasn't rushing between tables. "Life happened," she said with a small shrug. "My mom got sick during my 2nd year. Medical bills piled up. I took a semester off to help, thinking I'd go back, but..." She trailed off, the familiar pang of what could have been twisting in her chest. "One semester turned into forever. Now I work here and give piano lessons to kids on weekends." The man studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he glanced toward the corner of the restaurant where a baby grand piano sat largely for show. The restaurant hired professional pianists only for weekend evenings and special events. Tonight it sat silent. "Play something," he said suddenly. Lily blinked. "Excuse me?" "The piano. Play something." It wasn't quite a request, but not exactly a demand either. She laughed nervously. "I'm working, sir. I can't just..." "I'm Richard Thompson," he interrupted, as if that explained everything, and in a way it did. Lily recognized the name immediately. Richard Thompson was a real estate developer, whose name was plastered across half the new luxury buildings in the city. His net worth was rumored to be in the billions. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Thompson, but I still can't just sit down and play the piano during my shift. I'd lose my job." She tried to keep her tone light but firm. Richard Thompson wasn't used to hearing the word no. He leaned back in his chair, considering her. "What if I spoke to your manager?" "Please don't," Lily said quickly. "Greg's already stressed about the health inspector coming tomorrow." Thompson's eyes sparked with something. Amusement, challenge, or perhaps both. "What if I made it worth your while?" "And the restaurants?" Lily shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I really should get back to my other tables." $5,000, Thompson said casually, as if mentioning the weather. $5,000 if you play just one piece. Something that shows what Juilliard taught you." Lily froze. $5,000? That was 3 months' rent. That was the repair bill for her mother's aging car. That was the credit card debt that kept her awake at night. "You're joking," she said finally. Thompson pulled out his wallet and placed his credit card on the table. Do I look like I'm joking? One piece. Your choice. Lily glanced around the restaurant. The after-work crowd had thinned out, with just a few tables still occupied. Her section was mostly empty now, her remaining customers either finishing dessert or nursing after-dinner drinks. I haven't seriously played in years, she said weakly, though her fingers tingled at the thought. Then this should be interesting, Thompson replied with the hint of a smile. A couple at a nearby table had begun to notice their conversation. The woman whispered something to her companion while looking curiously in Lily's direction. Why? Lily couldn't help asking. Why would you offer a stranger that kind of money to play piano? Thompson considered her question. Let's call it curiosity, or boredom, or maybe I just want to see if Juilliard was worth the tuition. Lily bit her lip. She thought about her tiny apartment with the leaky faucet the landlord kept promising to fix. She thought about her mother's medical bills that still trickled in despite the insurance. She thought about her younger brother Tom, who was filling out college applications and deserved a chance she no longer had. One piece, she said finally. But I need to check with Greg first. Thompson nodded, seemingly satisfied. I'll handle your manager. Before Lily could protest, he was already motioning to Greg, who hurried over with the anxious expression of someone ready to apologize for whatever had displeased an important customer. Mr. Thompson, is everything all right with your meal? Greg asked. Excellent, as always, Thompson assured him. But I have an unusual request. I'd like your waitress to play the piano. Greg blinked rapidly, looking between Thompson and Lily. I'm sorry, sir, but our regular pianist is only here on weekends. If you'd like to make a special request for another evening, not your regular pianist. Lily. She just told me she studied at Juilliard. Thompson's tone made it clear he wasn't asking. I'm willing to make a substantial donation to show my appreciation to your establishment. Greg's eyes widened slightly at the implied offer. He turned to Lily with a questioning look. Is this true? You play piano? The surprise in his voice made Lily realize how little her colleagues actually knew about her. She'd been working at Bellagio's for almost 2 years, yet kept her personal life carefully separated from her work. I used to, she admitted, but it's been a while. Greg hesitated, clearly torn between maintaining restaurant protocol and pleasing a wealthy regular. Thompson pressed his advantage. Just one piece. Consider it impromptu entertainment. I'll cover any disruption to your other customers with a generous tip for everyone's inconvenience. The other diners who had overheard were now watching with interest. A white-haired woman at table 9 actually nodded encouragingly to Lily. Greg sighed. Well, I suppose. Just one short piece? The piano hasn't been tuned in a while, though. Lily could hardly believe what was happening. Are you sure? My tables. Jenny can cover them, Greg said, mentioning one of the servers who had just clocked in for the late shift. If Mr. Thompson is requesting this specially, the implication was clear. Don't upset the wealthy regular. Thompson smiled triumphantly. Excellent. Lily's heart pounded as she walked toward the piano. The restaurant had gone surprisingly quiet, with conversations tapering off as people realized something unusual was happening. Even the kitchen staff had poked their heads out, curious about the commotion. She sat down on the bench, adjusting it automatically as she'd done thousands of times before. The familiar position brought back a flood of memories. Long hours of practice, calloused fingertips, the exhilarating rush of mastering a difficult passage. Her hands hovered over the keys. What should she play? Her mind raced through her old repertoire. Something impressive enough to justify the interruption, but not so complex that her rusty skills would fail her. She pressed one key experimentally. The piano was indeed slightly out of tune, but not terribly so. She took a deep breath. Behind her, she could feel every eye in the restaurant watching. Thompson had turned his chair to face the piano directly. Greg hovered nervously by the bar. The couple from table 15 had actually gotten up and moved closer. Lily closed her eyes for a moment, trying to calm her racing heart. $5,000. For $5,000, she could play through a little stage fright. She placed her fingers in position and began to play the opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. She'd chosen it partly because it was one of the pieces she'd played most often, muscle memory hopefully making up for years of neglect, and partly because its gentle, dreamy quality seemed right for the moment. The first few notes were hesitant, her fingers stiff and unfamiliar on the keys. But as the melody took shape, something within her awakened. Her hands remembered what her conscious mind had forgotten. The music flowed through her, each phrase connecting to the next with increasing confidence. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously. She was aware of the restaurant around her and yet completely immersed in the piece, rediscovering the joy that had once been the center of her life. As the final notes faded, Lily became aware of the complete silence that had fallen over Bellagio's. For a terrifying second, she wondered if her playing had been terrible, if years away from serious practice had destroyed what talent she once possessed. Then the silence broke with the sound of applause. Enthusiastic, genuine applause that started with Thompson but quickly spread throughout the restaurant. Lily turned, flushed and slightly disoriented, to see the entire room on their feet. Even the kitchen staff were clapping, spoons and ladles temporarily abandoned. Greg looked stunned, his earlier concerns forgotten as he joined the applause. And at table 7, Richard Thompson was smiling. Not the practiced smile of a businessman making a deal, but something more genuine, as if he'd just discovered something precious that had been hidden in plain sight. The events that would unfold from this moment would change the course of Lily's life forever. But sitting there on the piano bench with the applause washing over her, all she felt was the return of something she thought she'd lost long ago. The pure, simple joy of music. The applause eventually died down, and Lily felt her cheeks burning as she stood from the piano bench. She smoothed her apron, not quite sure what to do next. The restaurant had transformed from its usual quiet dinner atmosphere into something electric. Customers who had been strangers moments before now smiled at her like old friends. "That was beautiful," said an elderly woman who had been dining with her husband. "Simply beautiful." Lily nodded her thanks, feeling oddly disconnected from her body. Her fingers still tingled from touching the keys after so long. Playing again had been like reuniting with an old friend. Awkward at first, then suddenly as comfortable and familiar as if no time had passed at all. Greg, the manager, approached her with a bewildered expression. "Lily, I had no idea. Why didn't you ever mention you could play like that?" She shrugged slightly. "It never came up. It's just something from my past." "From your past?" Greg shook his head in disbelief. "That wasn't just playing. That was something else entirely." Before Lily could respond, Richard Thompson joined them. Up close, he seemed less intimidating than he had at his table. There was genuine admiration in his eyes. "Well," he said simply, "I think that was worth every penny." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a checkbook. Lily's stomach tightened as she remembered the outlandish sum he had promised. Surely he hadn't been serious about the $5,000. That kind of money didn't just get handed over to waitresses who played piano in restaurants. "Mr. Thompson, that's really not necessary," she began. "Richard, please," he corrected her. "And a deal is a deal." He wrote the check with practiced efficiency, tore it from the book and held it out to her. Lily stared at it, not reaching for it. "I can't accept that," she said quietly. "It was just one piece. One piece that just silenced an entire restaurant." Richard continued to hold out the check. "I challenged you. You accepted. This is your payment, fairly earned." Greg looked like he might faint as he caught sight of the amount on the check. "Mr. Thompson, that's extremely generous." "It's not charity," Richard said firmly. "It's recognition of talent." A small crowd had gathered around them, curious about what was happening. Lily felt increasingly uncomfortable being the center of attention. She was used to blending into the background, not standing in the spotlight. "At least let me earn it properly," she finally said. "I could play another piece. Maybe something more challenging?" A murmur of excitement rippled through the onlookers. Someone from the back called out, "Yes, please." Richard tucked the check into the pocket of Lily's apron. "That was just the audition," he said with a smile. "Consider this a down payment." "Down payment for what?" Lily asked, confused. Before Richard could answer, Greg interjected, "Lily, maybe you should take a quick break. Jenny's covered your tables." The reminder of her actual job brought Lily back to reality. She was still on the clock. This surreal interlude hadn't changed the fact that she had responsibilities and customers waiting. "Right." She nodded. "I should get back to work." "Actually," Richard said, "I'd like to discuss something with you when your shift ends. How much longer are you working tonight?" Lily glanced at the clock. "About an hour and a half. But I have to catch the last bus at 11:30. "I'll wait," Richard said. And I can drive you home afterward. No need to worry about the bus. Alarm bells rang in Lily's head. Despite the generous check and the seemingly genuine appreciation for her playing, she wasn't about to get into a car with a stranger, wealthy or not. That's very kind. But I'll be fine with the bus, she said firmly. I can talk with you after my shift, though. Richard seemed to recognize her hesitation and nodded. Of course. I'll just have coffee at my table until you're done. As the impromptu audience dispersed and Lily returned to her serving duties, the atmosphere in the restaurant had changed. Customers who had previously barely acknowledged her now watched her with curious eyes. Several people stopped her to compliment her playing as she delivered their bills or cleared their tables. One middle-aged woman grabbed her hand as Lily refilled her water glass. My daughter is learning piano, she said. Do you give lessons? I'd love for her to learn from someone with your talent. I do teach on weekends, Lily replied, surprised. She fished a small notepad from her pocket and jotted down her phone number. Usually just beginners, though. Perfect, the woman said, tucking the paper into her purse. She just started 6 months ago. As the evening progressed, 3 more people asked about piano lessons. One man even inquired if she performed at private events. It was as if playing those few minutes of Chopin had transformed her from invisible waitress to respected musician before their eyes. Jenny, the server covering her tables, sidled up to her by the kitchen. So you're like what, a secret piano genius or something? She asked with a grin. The whole restaurant is buzzing about you. Lily shook her head. Not a genius, just someone who used to play a lot. Well, Mr. Fancy Pants over there hasn't taken his eyes off you. Jenny nodded toward Richard's table. And Greg says he gave you a check for $5 grand? Is that for real? Apparently. Lily touched her apron pocket where the check sat, still not quite believing it herself. What are you going to do with it? Jenny asked, wide-eyed. Lily hadn't even had time to think about it, but the answer came easily. My brother Tom is applying to colleges. This could help with application fees and deposits. And my mom's car needs work. You're not going to spend any of it on yourself? Jenny looked incredulous. The question caught Lily off guard. The concept of spending money on anything beyond necessities had become so foreign to her over the past few years. Between helping her mother with medical bills, supporting Tom, and keeping up with her own rent and expenses, there was never anything left over. Maybe I'll get my piano tuned, she said after a moment. The small upright in her apartment had been her mother's, and while Lily had kept it through multiple moves and tight living situations, she hadn't been able to afford proper maintenance for it in years. As her shift wound down, Lily found herself glancing more frequently at Richard's table. He sat there calmly, sometimes working on his laptop, occasionally watching her with an unreadable expression. The check in her pocket felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. $5,000 for 5 minutes of playing seemed absurd, yet there it was. Finally, at 10:45, Greg told her she could clock out early. You've had quite a night, he said. And I think your admirer is getting impatient. He's not my admirer, Lily corrected him automatically. Greg raised an eyebrow. Whatever you want to call him, he's left a $500 tip for the house on top of what he gave you. So take all the time you need to talk with him. Lily changed out of her work uniform in the employee bathroom, pulling on jeans and a simple sweater. She tucked the check securely into her wallet, still half expecting it to vanish like a dream. When she emerged, Richard was waiting near the entrance, his laptop packed away. Thank you for your patience, she said, approaching him cautiously. Some things are worth waiting for, he replied. They moved to a small table in the now quiet bar area where they could talk privately. So, Lily began, you wanted to discuss something? Richard leaned forward, his expression serious. I have a proposition for you, Lily, but first I need to know. Why did you leave Juilliard? The full story. The direct question caught her off guard. She'd given him the abbreviated version earlier, but rarely did she share all the details with anyone. It's not very exciting, she warned. My mom got sick during my sophomore year, breast cancer. She's a teacher, had decent insurance, but the co-pays and medications still added up. Then she couldn't work during chemo, so income was tight. Lily traced the edge of the table with her finger. I took a semester off to help at home, picked up waitressing to supplement her disability payments. And your father? Not in the picture since I was 10. Lily shrugged. Mom beat the cancer, thankfully, but by then I'd been out of school for nearly a year. The scholarship I had was given to someone else. I kept meaning to save up, go back, but then there was always another bill, another emergency. Richard nodded slowly. And the piano playing gradually stopped. At first I practiced when I could, but working double shifts doesn't leave much energy. Eventually it became too painful, a reminder of what I'd lost. Except for teaching kids basic lessons on weekends, I barely touched the keys anymore. She gave a small smile. Until tonight. That's what I thought, Richard said. He pulled out a business card and placed it on the table between them. I'm not just a real estate developer, Lily. I'm also on the board of the Wellington Music Foundation. Lily's eyes widened slightly. The Wellington Foundation was well known in music circles for supporting arts education and providing scholarships to promising musicians. Each year, we sponsor 5 musicians to complete their education or advance their careers, Richard continued. Usually candidates go through an extensive application and audition process, but occasionally I find someone extraordinary through less conventional channels. Like challenging random waitresses to play piano? Lily asked, a hint of humor in her voice. Richard smiled. The pendant gave you away. Musicians always keep something to remind them of their passion, even when they think they've left it behind. Lily's hand went instinctively to the piano key necklace. So this was all some kind of test? Call it instinct. I've been in business long enough to recognize untapped potential. He tapped his business card. I'd like you to audition formally for our scholarship committee next week. If selected, the foundation would cover your tuition to complete your degree, plus a living stipend so you don't have to work full-time while studying. Lily felt like the air had been sucked from her lungs. I don't even know what to say. Say you'll consider it. The $5,000 is yours regardless. Consider it compensation for the impromptu performance and the years you've spent away from what you clearly love. Lily stared at the business card, her mind racing. Going back to Juilliard had been a distant dream for so long that she'd packed it away with other childish fantasies. The idea of returning, of having a second chance, was almost too much to comprehend. What's the catch? She asked finally, her practical side asserting itself. No catch, Richard replied. The foundation exists to find and support musical talent that might otherwise be lost. Talent like yours. For the second time that night, Lily found herself at a crossroads. The check in her wallet could solve her immediate problems, but this opportunity could change the entire trajectory of her life. I'll think about it, she said finally. Richard nodded, seemingly satisfied. That's all I ask. The audition is next Thursday at 2 p.m. The address is on the card. He stood and extended his hand. Whatever you decide, thank you for the performance tonight. It was truly special. As Lily shook his hand and watched him leave, the quiet restaurant felt charged with possibility. The piano in the corner seemed to call to her, and for the first time in years she allowed herself to hear it. Lily couldn't sleep that night. Her tiny apartment, usually a place of exhausted collapse after long shifts, now felt too small to contain the storm of emotions inside her. She sat on the edge of her bed at 2 a.m., staring at Richard Thompson's business card in one hand and the check for $5,000 in the other. The moonlight filtering through her thin curtains cast everything in a dreamy blue glow. Was this really happening? People like her didn't get second chances like this. Not in real life. She set the card and check on her nightstand and moved to the corner of her living room where her mother's old piano stood. The upright Baldwin had survived 3 moves, water damage from a leaky ceiling in her previous apartment, and years of neglect. Its once rich mahogany finish was now dull and scratched. Several keys stuck when pressed too hard. The last professional tuning had been 5 years ago, yet it was still here. Like her pendant, she couldn't bear to part with it, even when money was tight and selling it would have made financial sense. Lily sat on the bench and gently lifted the cover. She didn't turn on a lamp, afraid to wake her neighbors at this hour. In the darkness, she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play softly. The same Chopin nocturne she had performed at the restaurant. The piano was painfully out of tune, but that didn't matter. Something had awakened in her that evening, something she thought had died years ago. As her fingers moved across the familiar patterns, tears slid down her cheeks. How had she stayed away so long, Lily? A sleepy voice came from the hallway. Her younger brother Tom stood there, rubbing his eyes. At 18, he was in his final year of high school, tall and lanky with the same dark hair as Lily. It's the middle of the night. Sorry, she whispered, pulling her hands away from the keys. I didn't mean to wake you. Tom shuffled into the living room, more curious than annoyed. You're playing again? You haven't touched that thing in forever. Lily wiped her eyes quickly, hoping the darkness hid her tears. Something happened at work today. Tom dropped onto their worn couch, suddenly more alert. What kind of something? Lily told him everything. The wealthy customer, the challenge, the unexpected performance, the applause, and finally, the offer that might change everything. $5,000? For real? Tom's eyes went wide when she mentioned the check. Let me see. Lily retrieved it from her nightstand. Tom held it reverently, as if it might disintegrate in his hands. And this guy wants you to audition for a full scholarship? He looked up at her with an expression that was both excited and concerned. You're going to do it, right? Lily sank onto the couch beside him. I don't know. What's not to know? This is what you've always wanted. That was before everything changed. Lily ran her fingers through her hair. I'm 26 now, Tom. Most of the students would be years younger. So what? So it's been 4 years since I really practiced. You heard that piano, it's a mess. And even if I got in, what about Mom? What about you in college? Tom's expression hardened. Don't use me as an excuse. I'm not, it's just, you've put your life on hold for us long enough, Tom interrupted. Mom's cancer has been in remission for 3 years. I've got scholarship applications out, and now you have this chance. He handed the check back to her. If you don't at least try, you'll regret it forever. Lily looked at her brother, surprised by his maturity. When had he grown up so much? She'd been so busy working and worrying that she'd almost missed it. When did you get so wise? She asked with a small smile. Tom shrugged. Probably all those lectures you gave me about following my dreams and never giving up. Turns out they actually sank in. The next morning, Lily called their mother. Patricia Chen had returned to teaching 3rd grade after her recovery, but still tired easily. She listened quietly as Lily explained everything that had happened. Oh, sweetheart, she said when Lily finished. This sounds like a miracle. It's probably too good to be true, Lily cautioned. And even if it's legitimate, there's no guarantee I'd get the scholarship after a formal audition. But you have to try, her mother insisted. You've sacrificed so much for us. Too much. I did what anyone would do, Lily protested. No, her mother said firmly. What you did was extraordinary, and it broke my heart to see you give up what you loved most. I didn't give it up, Lily said automatically. I just put it on pause. For 4 years. Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. It's time to press play again, don't you think? After hanging up, Lily went to her closet and pulled out a storage box she hadn't opened in years. Inside were her music books, competition certificates, recital programs, and a stack of sheet music with her old professor's notes scribbled in the margins. The smell of paper and ink brought back memories of practice rooms and concert halls, of nerves and triumphs and the pure joy of performance. She took a deep breath and picked up her phone. It took 3 attempts before she managed to dial the number on Richard Thompson's business card. Wellington Foundation answered a crisp, professional voice. Yes, hello, Lily said, her voice shakier than she'd like. My name is Lily Chen. Richard Thompson asked me to call about an audition next Thursday. There was a pause, the sound of computer keys clicking. Ms. Chen, yes, Mr. Thompson added you to the schedule yesterday. 2 p.m. on Thursday. Do you need the address? So it was real. Part of her had still expected this to be some elaborate prank or misunderstanding. Yes, please, she managed. After hanging up, Lily looked at the clock. She had a shift at Bellagio's starting in an hour, followed by 3 piano lessons with neighborhood kids, then 6 days to prepare for an audition that might change everything. She needed to practice, but first she needed to get her piano fixed. The Piano Doctor was a small shop 15 blocks from Lily's apartment. She'd passed it often but never gone inside, knowing she couldn't afford their services. Today was different. Today she had a check for $5,000 in her purse. The bell above the door jingled as she entered. A gray-haired man looked up from a dismantled piano in the center of the shop. Reading glasses perched on the end of his nose and his hands were stained with polish and oil. Can I help you? He asked. I need my piano tuned, Lily said, and possibly some repairs. Several keys stick, and I think there might be some issues with the action. The man, Harold according to his name tag, nodded thoughtfully. Home visit or can you bring it in? It would have to be a home visit. It's an old Baldwin upright. Too big for me to move. When were you thinking? We're booked about 2 weeks out right now. Lily's heart sank. Oh, I was hoping for something sooner. I have an important audition next Thursday. Harold's bushy eyebrows rose. An audition, eh? Juilliard? Manhattan School of Music? Actually, yes. A scholarship audition for Juilliard. To go back and finish my degree. Something in her voice must have conveyed the importance of this, because Harold studied her more carefully. You were a student there before? Lily nodded. I had to leave in my sophomore year. Family emergency. Harold put down his tools and wiped his hands on a rag. I might be able to squeeze you in tomorrow morning before my first appointment. 7:30. That work for you? Relief flooded through her. Yes, that would be perfect. Thank you. It'll be extra for the rush job, he warned. Tuning starts at $150 plus any repairs. That's fine, Lily said, thinking of the check. For once, she didn't have to count every penny. The next morning, Harold arrived promptly at 7:30 with his tools. He spent nearly an hour examining her piano, occasionally making little grunts of discovery. When was the last time this had proper maintenance? He asked, not looking up from the internal mechanisms. About 5 years ago, Lily admitted. Harold shook his head. It's a miracle it plays at all. The humidity in this building hasn't done you any favors. He pointed to several worn parts. Action needs work. Hammers need reshaping, and this soundboard has a hairline crack. Lily's stomach tightened. Can it be fixed? Course it can. Question is whether it's worth it to you. Looking at about $800 for everything it needs, plus the tuning. $800. Before yesterday, that figure would have been impossible. Now it was simply a fraction of her unexpected windfall. Do it, she said without hesitation. How long will it take? For a proper job? I'd need to take some parts back to the shop. Could have it back to you by Monday. 4 days without a piano to practice on. The audition was in a week. Panic rose in Lily's throat. I don't suppose, she began. You can use the practice room at my shop, Harold said, seemingly reading her mind. Got a nice Yamaha there. Not as good as the Steinways you're used to at Juilliard. But it'll do. No charge. Really? That would be amazing. Harold smiled for the first time. Not every day I get to help someone get back to Juilliard. My daughter studied there, clarinet performance. Class of '09. As Harold worked on disassembling parts of her piano, Lily called Bellagio's. For the first time in 2 years, she requested time off. A full week to prepare for the audition. Greg, still amazed by her performance and clearly hoping to keep his newly discovered pianist Waitress happy, agreed immediately. Take all the time you need, he said. Just promise you'll come back and play for us again sometime, whatever happens with this audition. The next 6 days became a blur of practice. Lily spent 8 to 10 hours daily at Harold's shop, working through her audition pieces. Her fingers, which had grown soft from years of disuse, developed blisters that turned to calluses. Muscles she had forgotten about screamed in protest, then gradually strengthened. Most importantly, her passion, the deep love of music that had defined her early life, came rushing back like a flood breaking through a dam. Tom helped her select her audition pieces: Bach's Prelude and Fugue in D minor, Beethoven's Appassionata Sonata, and Chopin's Ballade No. 1, the piece she had been working on when she left Juilliard. Harold, who stopped by occasionally to listen, offered technical advice and encouragement. You're getting there, he said on Tuesday. By Thursday you'll be ready. But as the audition day approached, doubt crept in. Was she fooling herself? 4 years was a long time in the competitive world of classical piano. Her technique was returning, but would it be enough? On Wednesday night she returned home exhausted from her final practice session, to find Tom and their mother sitting in her living room. Her newly repaired piano stood in the corner, looking almost new with its polished finish. What are you doing here? Lily asked her mother in surprise. You didn't drive all the way from Newburgh by yourself, did you? Patricia Chen smiled. Tom picked me up after school. We thought you could use the support. And we brought dinner, Tom added, pointing to bags of Chinese takeout on the kitchen counter. Harold called and said your piano was ready, so he let us in. As they ate, Lily's nervousness about tomorrow's audition spilled out. What if I'm not good enough anymore? What if I embarrass myself? Her mother reached across the table and took her hand. Do you remember what you told me when I was starting chemotherapy and terrified about losing my hair? Lily shook her head. You said, hair grows back, Mom, but time doesn't, so let's not waste it being afraid. Patricia squeezed her hand. Your music is growing back, Lily. Don't waste tomorrow being afraid. Later that night, after her family left, Lily sat at her restored piano. The keys felt different, responsive and alive under her fingers. She played through her audition pieces one last time, not for practice now, but for herself. Tomorrow would come with its judgment and consequences. But tonight, in the quiet of her apartment, there was just the music, the same music that had been waiting patiently for her return all these years. Thursday morning arrived with golden sunshine streaming through Lily's apartment windows. She'd barely slept, drifting in and out of dreams where she was back at Juilliard, then at Bellagio's, then somehow playing piano while serving food to a restaurant full of classical music critics. She got up at 5, too nervous to stay in bed any longer. The audition wasn't until 2 p.m., but she couldn't risk being late. After a shower, she stood before her closet, suddenly realizing she had nothing appropriate to wear. Her wardrobe consisted mainly of work uniforms, jeans, and casual tops, nothing suitable for a formal audition at one of the world's most prestigious music schools. Panic was setting in when her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Check your front door. Puzzled, Lily opened her apartment door to find a garment bag hanging on the doorknob. Inside was a simple but elegant navy blue dress with a note pinned to it. Every pianist needs a performance outfit. Break a leg today. Love, Mom and Tom. Tears pricked at her eyes. Her family believed in her even when she struggled to believe in herself. Lily tried on the dress, a perfect fit. She hadn't worn anything this nice in years. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. With her hair pulled back and wearing the dress, she looked like a professional musician again, not a waitress. By noon, she was ready, the address programmed into her phone's map app. The Wellington Foundation offices were located in a sleek high-rise in Midtown Manhattan. Despite leaving early, subway delays made her arrival cutting it closer than she'd planned. She hurried through the revolving doors at 1:40 p.m., 20 minutes before her scheduled audition. The security guard checked her ID and directed her to the 34th floor. The elevator ride gave her a moment to breathe deeply and try to calm her racing heart. She'd performed hundreds of times before. Recitals, competitions, juries. Why did this feel so different? Because everything rides on this, she thought. This isn't just another performance. This is my second chance. The Wellington Foundation occupied the entire 34th floor. The reception area featured floor-to-ceiling windows with breathtaking views of the city. Tasteful artwork, mostly music-themed, adorned the walls, and a baby grand piano sat in one corner. Ms. Chen? The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile. Welcome to the Wellington Foundation. If you'd like to warm up before your audition, you're welcome to use the piano. Lily glanced at the gleaming instrument. Her fingers itched to test it, to feel its action and responsiveness before the actual audition, but her nerves were getting the better of her. Maybe just for a minute, she said. She set her bag down and approached the piano with reverence. This was no ordinary instrument. It was a Steinway Model B, similar to what she'd played at Juilliard. She sat on the bench and played a simple C major scale, feeling the perfect weight of the keys beneath her fingers. The sound was exquisite, resonating in the open space with a clarity that made her Baldwin at home seem like a toy in comparison. She closed her eyes and played a brief passage from her Bach piece, losing herself momentarily in the familiar patterns. That sounds promising. Lily's eyes snapped open. Richard Thompson stood a few feet away, watching her with an approving expression. Mr. Thompson, she said, quickly standing. I was just warming up a little. Please continue, he said, and call me Richard. How are you feeling about today? Lily's hands twisted together nervously. Terrified, to be honest. Richard nodded understandingly. That's normal. But from what I heard the other night, you have nothing to worry about. He checked his watch. The committee will be ready for you in about 10 minutes. There are 5 of us altogether. Myself, 2 professors from Juilliard's piano faculty, the Foundation's artistic director, and our executive director. 5 people. 5 experts who would be judging her, assessing whether she was worth investing in after a 4-year absence from serious music study. Lily felt lightheaded. What? Her voice caught and she cleared her throat. What exactly will happen? You'll play your prepared pieces and then we'll have a short interview. We want to understand not just your technical abilities, but your musical goals and commitment. Richard's expression softened. This isn't an interrogation, Lily. We want to help talented musicians like you. That's why the foundation exists. A young man in a crisp suit approached them. Mr. Thompson, the committee is ready whenever Ms. Chen is. Richard turned to Lily. Take a moment if you need it. We're in the recital space down the hall when you're ready. After he left, Lily took a deep breath and gathered her sheet music, though she'd memorized all her pieces. The paper was more of a security blanket than a necessity. She followed the assistant down a hallway lined with photographs of musicians. Past scholarship recipients, she realized. Young faces beaming with the same hope she now felt. The recital space was a small but acoustically perfect room, with another Steinway grand as its centerpiece. 5 people sat at a table facing the piano. With Richard in the center, he gave her an encouraging smile. Ms. Chen, said an older woman with silver hair, welcome. I'm Dr. Eleanor Winters, Artistic Director of the Wellington Foundation. Please make yourself comfortable at the piano. Begin when you're ready and play in whatever order feels right to you. Lily nodded and approached the piano. She adjusted the bench, took a moment to center herself, and placed her hands on the keys. In that moment of silence before beginning, her mind flashed through everything that had brought her here. Her mother's illness, the years of waiting tables, Tom's encouragement, Harold's kindness, and Richard's unexpected challenge at the restaurant. Then she began to play. She started with Bach, the intricate patterns of the prelude and fugue flowing from her fingers with a precision that surprised even her. The music filled the room, bouncing off the acoustic panels and returning to her ears with crystal clarity. As she transitioned to Beethoven, she felt herself fully surrender to the music. The Appassionata lived up to its name, passionate, stormy, and demanding everything from the performer. Lily poured all her frustrations, hopes, and dreams into the piece. The years of carrying trays, counting tips, and putting her passion aside transformed into energy that flowed through her and into the instrument. By the time she reached the Chopin ballad, the piece she'd been working on when she left Juilliard, she was no longer in the audition room. She was simply in the music, telling her story through Chopin's notes. The technical challenges that had worried her during practice now seemed to solve themselves as her muscle memory and renewed passion carried her through. The final chords resonated through the room, and then there was silence. Lily's hands rested on the keys as the last notes faded away. For a moment no one spoke, and she was afraid to look up, afraid of what she might see on their faces. Thank you, Ms. Chen, Dr. Winters said finally, her voice softer than before. That was quite remarkable. Lily finally looked up. All 5 committee members were watching her with expressions ranging from surprise to frank admiration. Richard was smiling broadly. I understand you've been away from serious study for 4 years? Asked one of the Juilliard professors, a slender man with round glasses. Yes, Lily said. Almost 4.5 now. And you've been maintaining this level of playing while working full-time? He continued, skepticism evident in his tone. No, she admitted honestly. I've barely played at all until very recently. I had a rediscovery, you could say, about a week ago. The committee members exchanged glances. A week, repeated the professor. You prepared this program in a week after years away from the instrument? Lily nodded, suddenly worried. Was that bad? Should she have mentioned the gap in her playing? That's either extremely impressive or extremely foolhardy, he said, though his expression had softened to something like respect. Perhaps both, added Dr. Winters with a small smile. Miss Chen, why do you want to return to Juilliard after so long? This was the question Lily had been preparing for, yet now that it was asked, all her rehearsed answers fled her mind. She could only speak from her heart. Because music isn't just what I do, it's who I am, she said. Even when I wasn't playing, it was still inside me, waiting. I thought I had to choose between helping my family and pursuing my passion. I chose my family, and I don't regret that. But now I have a chance to choose both, and I can't imagine not taking it. The interview continued for another 15 minutes, with questions about her previous study at Juilliard, her musical influences, and her goals if she returned. Finally, Dr. Winters closed her folder. Thank you, Ms. Chen. You've given us a lot to consider. We'll be making our decisions by the end of next week, and you'll be notified immediately. Lily stood, legs slightly shaky. Thank you for the opportunity. As the committee gathered their notes, Richard approached her. That was exceptional, Lily, truly. It felt good, she admitted. Better than good. It felt right. Whatever happens with the committee's decision, Richard said quietly, don't stop playing again. The world needs your music. Outside the building, Lily checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Tom and 5 texts asking how it went. She called him immediately. Well? He demanded without preamble. I played better than I thought I could, she said, still processing everything. But I won't know their decision for a week. But how do you feel? Tom pressed. Lily paused, realizing she hadn't asked herself that question. How did she feel? Alive, she said finally. I feel alive. The following days were both easier and harder than the weeks before. Easier because the pressure of the audition was behind her. Harder because the waiting was its own special kind of torture. She returned to work at Bellagio's, but things had changed. Word of her performance had spread, and customers sometimes requested to be seated in the pianist section. Greg had even put up a small sign on the piano. Live music featuring Lily Chen every Saturday night. Hope that's okay, he said when she noticed it. People have been asking when you'll play again. I figured we could make it a regular thing. If you're interested, of course. Paid, obviously. Lily was touched. I'd like that. And if you end up going back to school, Greg continued, the offer stands for weekends or breaks. No pressure. On her first official night as the restaurant's pianist, Lily arrived early to prepare. The piano had been tuned, and a small vase of flowers sat atop it. She played for an hour, mixing classical pieces with more accessible modern songs. The restaurant filled quickly, with several customers mentioning they had come specifically to hear her play. Between sets, she served a few tables, though Greg had reduced her section to accommodate her new dual role. As she delivered a bottle of wine to a table near the window, she noticed a familiar face. Richard Thompson sat with 4 other people, the audition committee from the Wellington Foundation. Her stomach dropped. Why would they all be here together, a week before decisions were supposed to be announced? Had they already decided? Was this their way of letting her down gently? Richard caught her eye and motioned for her to come over. Nervously, she approached the table. Ms. Chen, Dr. Winters greeted her. Your playing tonight was lovely. Different repertoire than your audition, but equally well executed. Thank you, Lily said, uncertain where this was going. We weren't planning to finalize decisions until next week, Dr. Winters continued. But after your audition, there was really nothing to debate. She glanced at her colleagues, who all nodded in agreement. Richard handed Lily an envelope. The official letter will be sent to your address, but we thought you might like to hear the news in person. With trembling fingers, Lily opened the envelope. Inside was a formal letter with the Wellington Foundation letterhead, offering her a full scholarship to complete her degree at Juilliard, plus a monthly stipend for living expenses. Congratulations. Ms. Chen, said Dr. Winters, raising her glass in a toast. The Wellington Foundation is honored to support your return to Juilliard this fall. Tears blurred Lily's vision as the reality sank in. This wasn't just a second chance at music, it was a second chance at the life she'd thought was forever lost to her. I don't know what to say, she managed. Say you'll accept, Richard said with a smile. Yes, Lily nodded, wiping away a tear. Yes, I accept. As the committee members offered their congratulations, Greg appeared at her elbow, clearly confused by the scene. Everything okay, Lily? She turned to him, unable to contain her smile. Everything's perfect. I just got some amazing news. She held up the letter. I'm going back to Juilliard. 6 months had passed since that life-changing night at Bellagio's when Richard Thompson had challenged Lily to play the piano. Now, on a crisp autumn morning, Lily stood outside the imposing entrance to Juilliard, taking in the familiar yet somehow new surroundings. Students hurried past her, instrument cases slung over shoulders, coffee cups in hand, faces both anxious and excited at the start of a new semester. At 26, Lily was older than most of her classmates, but that didn't matter anymore. She belonged here just as much as any of them. You going in or just admiring the view? A friendly voice broke into her thoughts. Lily turned to find Harold, the piano technician, standing beside her with a wide grin. Since repairing her piano and offering his shop for her practice sessions, he had become a cherished mentor and friend. "Just taking it all in," she admitted. "It doesn't quite feel real yet." "Well, it's plenty real," Harold said, gesturing to the building, "and they're lucky to have you back." Harold had come to the city to tune pianos at the school, one of his regular gigs, and had offered to meet Lily for moral support on her first day. He straightened his bow tie, which seemed to be his concession to the prestigious surroundings. "You ready?" he asked. Lily took a deep breath and nodded. "As I'll ever be." They walked in together, Harold's familiar presence calming her nerves. The hallways echoed with snippets of music, a violin scale here, a voice exercise there, a trumpet blaring from a distant practice room. The sounds wrapped around Lily like a welcome home embrace. "My appointment's in the piano lab," Harold said. "Your first class?" "Theory in room 340. Lily checked her schedule again, though she had memorized it days ago. "Then a master class this afternoon." Harold patted her shoulder. "Knock 'em dead, kid. I'll catch you later." As he headed toward the piano lab, Lily made her way to her theory class. She had tested back into the third-year curriculum, picking up almost exactly where she had left off 4 years ago. The Wellington Foundation scholarship covered everything: tuition, books, even a housing stipend that allowed her to move into a small apartment closer to campus. Her new place was tiny but perfect, with enough room for her beloved Baldwin piano, which Harold had restored to near-perfect condition. More importantly, it had good soundproofing, allowing her to practice late into the night without disturbing neighbors. The theory classroom looked exactly as she remembered: rows of desks facing a grand piano and a whiteboard covered in musical notation. Several students were already seated, chatting or reviewing notes. Lily chose a spot near the middle and began organizing her materials. "You're Lily Chen, aren't you?" asked a young woman who took the seat beside her. Lily looked up, surprised. "Yes, how did you know?" "Everyone knows," the woman said with an admiring smile. "You're the waitress who got discovered playing piano in a restaurant. It was all over social media." Lily blinked in confusion. "What do you mean, all over social media?" Before the woman could answer, their professor entered and class began. For the next hour, Lily focused intently, falling back into the familiar rhythms of music theory as if she'd never left. But the young woman's comment lingered in her mind. After class, she pulled out her phone and searched her name along with piano and restaurant. To her astonishment, dozens of results appeared. Someone had recorded her playing that first night at Bellagio's and posted the video online. It had over 2 million views. The comments section was filled with remarks of admiration and support. "This is why I believe in second chances. Her face when she plays. That's what passion looks like. From serving food to serving up Chopin. What a story." There were follow-up videos too. Interviews with Greg from Bellagio's, clips of her Saturday night performances after she'd started playing regularly at the restaurant. Even a short segment on a local news channel about her Wellington Foundation scholarship. Lily sank onto a bench in the hallway, overwhelmed. She'd been so focused on her audition, on preparing to return to school, that she'd completely missed becoming a minor internet sensation. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Killing it on your first day?" She smiled and replied, "Did you know there are videos of me playing online?" 3 dots appeared immediately, then, "Duh. Who do you think recorded the first one?" "You," she typed back in shock, guilty. "But in my defense, I knew you were amazing and thought other people should see it too. Not my fault it went viral." "You mad?" Lily wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, it was strange to think thousands of strangers had watched her most vulnerable moment. On the other hand, without that video, would the Wellington Foundation Committee have been as impressed? Would they have believed her story about rediscovering her passion after years away? "Not mad," she replied finally. "Just surprised. Gotta go to next class. Talk later." The rest of the day passed in a blur of new information, introductions, and finding her way around the familiar yet different campus. By afternoon, she was mentally exhausted but exhilarated. This was where she belonged. The final class of the day was a piano master class with Professor Daniels, who had been one of the Juilliard faculty members on the Wellington Foundation Committee. He nodded to her in recognition as she took her seat in the back of the room. One by one, students performed prepared pieces, receiving critique and guidance from Professor Daniels. His feedback was incisive but kind, focusing on interpretation rather than just technical skill. "Ms. Chen," he said near the end of the class, "would you mind playing for us today? I know it's your first day back, but I think your fellow students could learn from your interpretation of the Chopin you played at your audition." All eyes turned to Lily. Playing in a master class on her first day back hadn't been part of her plan. But then again, neither had playing piano in a restaurant for a millionaire, and that had turned out rather well. "Of course," she said. Rising from her seat, as she approached the piano, she noticed some students whispering to each other. Word had clearly spread about her unusual path back to Juilliard. Rather than making her nervous, the realization gave her confidence. She had earned her place here, not through a conventional route, but through perseverance and passion. She played the Chopin ballade with even more assurance than at her audition, letting the music tell her story, the struggle, the waiting, and the ultimate return to her true calling. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before the room erupted in applause. Professor Daniels nodded appreciatively. "That," he said to the class, "is what happens when life experience informs musical interpretation. Technical skill is vital, yes, but it's the humanity behind the notes that moves an audience. Thank you, Ms. Chen." After class, several students approached her with questions and compliments. One young man asked if she would join their study group, while a young woman wondered if Lily might listen to her play sometime and offer feedback. For the first time, Lily realized that her unconventional journey might actually be an asset here, not something to hide or overcome. That evening, as she practiced in her new apartment, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Bellagio's piano with a small reserved sign on it, followed by a message. "Your spot's waiting whenever you're ready for your triumphant return. The Saturday night crowd misses you." Lily smiled. She'd been worried about losing touch with the people who had supported her before her return to Juilliard. The regular customers who had become fans, and even her piano students, though she'd found replacements for each of them before starting school. But it seemed some bridges didn't need to be burned to move forward. She could be both a serious music student and the pianist who played Saturday nights at Bellagio's. Both were genuine parts of who she was now. 3 months into the semester, Lily received an invitation to perform at the Wellington Foundation's annual benefit gala. Richard had sent a personal note along with the formal invitation. "The board would love our latest success story to perform. It helps inspire potential donors, and frankly, you're the most interesting scholarship recipient we've had in years." The gala was held at one of New York's most prestigious concert halls. Donors in formal wear mingled over champagne, while a string quartet played softly in the background. Lily, dressed in a simple but elegant black gown, another gift from her mother, waited backstage, reviewing her music one last time. "Nervous?" Richard appeared beside her, distinguished in his tuxedo. "A little," Lily admitted. "It's a big crowd." "Smaller than your internet audience," Richard said with a smile, and Lily laughed, still getting used to that idea. Richard's expression grew more serious. "I knew you were special the moment I saw that piano key pendant. But even I couldn't have predicted how perfectly this would all work out. Was it really just the pendant that made you challenge me that night?" Lily had always wondered. Richard considered the question. "The pendant caught my attention, yes. But it was how you carried yourself, with quiet dignity despite the challenges life had thrown at you. I recognized something in you that reminded me of myself years ago." "You were a waiter?" Lily asked, surprised. "No," Richard chuckled. "But I was a struggling architect who nearly gave up on my passion to take a safe corporate job. Someone took a chance on me, gave me my first major commission when all I had was a portfolio of theoretical designs. That building's success launched my career in